Today, I'd like to welcome an esteemed colleague and friend, Professor Oliver Gassman from St. Gallen University. Oliver is a leading expert not only in open innovation, which would be great in itself, but also he has to show me up by being an expert in business model innovation as well. Oliver has written over 400 books and is the leading expert and most cited in R&D management. And he has a book called The Business Model Navigator that we're going to talk about later on today. But Oliver, firstly, we're in a really unusual time at the moment. From an SME perspective, what should companies be doing?
I think we're really in a very, very challenging time. And I think the market capitalization of companies does not reflect actually the severe situation we're in. Besides the human challenge, the ups and downs, what we have, the big politics, I think we're in a very deep trouble. Just having in mind that the state debts worldwide in the last 10 years had been increased by 4 times as much as it used to do all the decades before. We are in a severe economic situation. And I think there are 2 conclusions. First is actually, what are we doing in the short term? And short term, especially for SMEs, often it's a question of survival. I think in an economic downturn, you just need to, cash first to get the business going. The second thing is actually, where are we heading in the long term? In the short term, I would say you need to adapt your business model. And I think I have a lot of interesting examples. What I saw, like in Spain, I saw a rent-a-dog business because regulation allowed people to go only outside if you walk with the dog. So, rent-a-dog business. Or I see a winemaker who is doing a wine tasting on a virtual base. So, you just sell your wine and then you said, well, we meet next Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the evening for the virtual wine tasting. This is a frugal, very agile kind of an innovation. You think, what is actually customer really wanting? And you try, learn, adapt. And it's just important that you just increase the learning speed. And I think in the short term, actually, we have a few losers of the whole COVID-19 crisis. I think it's a lot, like restaurants, hairdressers, all those with direct customer contact. Now we have also short-term winners. That's all, the Zoom platform, all the virtual collaboration tools. I think that is something which is here to stay. But then we have, and that is very important, we have also to think, after we have survived what is in a post-COVID-19 world, how will we go on? Because a few things are here to stay. And how do we need to adapt? And here I think we have to identify all the trends which are changing and challenging our business model in the long term. And this is something like virtual collaboration, like the shift from retail stores to online shopping, which has been taking anyway place. But this is just accelerated. And from innovation research, we know actually that crises often accelerate trends. They do not necessarily create new trends. We think actually some new trends are coming, but often actually it is an ongoing trend. It's but just much more accelerated, like this on-off mode business, like digitalization in communication, like online shopping. These trends will be right now accelerated. And we have therefore actually to check right now, how do we adapt actually our business in order to survive in a more long-term future after we have survived like the cash strains and really the emergent situation in the short term. I think SMEs are overall have the ability to move more agile. I mean, the big programs, I start a lot with large multinational companies. This is something, say, hey, why not behave a bit more like an SME, like a startup, especially young SMEs? Now we have the challenge of those traditional over many family generations grown SMEs, and I'm on the board of two of those SMEs, where it's difficult to lose the heritage or still to keep the positive heritage, but at the same time accelerate the learning and give away a few things where maybe the father's generation or the parent generation where I was very proud of, and maybe that has been actually the origin of the growth. But right now times change, and because of the actual trends, actually we need to get loose of and need to focus actually on different areas. And here I think we need to be adaptive, and I think that opportunity is there, because we have just to remind ourselves that a lot of large companies realize that at the moment, this global supply chains became actually too fragile, especially for now system-relevant products, for health-relevant products. We got a lot of challenges here also in Switzerland, because I think a lot of essential things have been actually missing where we had been totally dependent on China. Now, you try to build up actually like a multiple sourcing or at least a dual sourcing for multinational companies. And this is the opportunity for SMEs, which often do not have the large economies of scale, the large volumes to be as cost effective, but to say, well, we're here to build up some kind of redundancies. We are here in a more regional way, in a national way, or at least in a European way. We're a bit more close by. And this is at the moment a big opportunity to jump in if your business model is rightly adjusted.
Business model is more than just your profit margin. Can you talk to us a little bit, define what business model is and why it's so
Absolutely.
important?
The easiest way to describe it is a business model is the story of your company, how to create value and capture value. Now, creating value is important. You need to create value. Mostly it is about getting some kind of profits from margins for your customer. Otherwise, you won't get a customer. And for yourself, that's the capturing part. So for both ways. But it does not have to be, a business model does not have to be always on the monetary things. There's also non-profit organizations which have very clear business models. That's extremely important, like Red Cross and other organizations. They have actually also a business model. It's always the story how to create value and to capture value. We did it a bit more distinguished. For us, a business model is the integrated answer to 4 questions. First, who is your target customer? Second, what is the value proposition you offer to this customer? The value proposition has to be based really on the gains, on the hidden gains and pains of a customer, and how to relieve the pain, how to create a gain, how to develop products which deliver the functionality of a gain creator and a pain reliever. And so it's really answering the real needs of a customer. Third, how to implement the value proposition, which is actually the supply chain architecture. How to create actually the value. Are we doing it alone? Are we doing it with partners? Do we have the whole value chain in our own hands? Do we collaborate? Also, how do we do the co-branding? What is the distribution channel? What platforms are we going on? That's the how question. And then the why is it profitable, the value, which is actually addressing the revenue model. And these 4 questions, integrated answer to those 4 questions, that is important. If all 4 goes together, and we have defined that at least 2 of those cornerstones of a business model, the question of who is the customer, what's the value proposition, how is it implemented, and why profitable. If 2 out of these 4 questions are at the same time addressed, then we are talking about a business model innovation. And that's what I recommend at the moment, because the big synergies, according to our empirical research, lies often in the combination of those 4 cornerstones. If we think simultaneously in several dimensions.
You have a new book coming out, or a new version of the Business Model Navigator. So in the last book, you gave us 55 different models, from the Gillette razor blade to freemium to all of these different business models that I'd encourage people to look at. What's new in the new book?
What's new in the new book? First, we came up with a few new patterns, like sensor as a service, equipment as a service, which helps us a bit, in the new IoT world, how to create actually commercial business out of IoT, Internet of Things. How can we do more out of the industrial IoT world? And that was a bit of a missing part, and we created there, or we identified there new patterns. But I think what's most important is actually we realized that the biggest bottleneck in business model innovation is from not the ideation part of the first idea, but how to decrease the number of opportunities actually to a few parts as fast as possible and go forward as cheap as possible. So really this think big, start small, fail cheap and learn fast. This is the principle I'm actually enforcing. This is my mantra. And we brought it into the new book by especially focusing actually on the testing phase. So after first you start to know your first business model. What is actually today's business model, in answering the 4 questions, including understanding the change drivers, including new entrants. You go then to the ideation phase with the additional patterns, but with actually confronting with the patterns, and that's not the big difference. But then after going to the detail, then it's getting important. Is the new business model consistent? Is it consistent with the external drivers? Right now, that's why I think it's important to identify really what is happening in the COVID-19 crisis right now and how does it affect our business. There are a few ongoing mega trends, and you can assume they will ongoing, but a few will be accelerated a lot. And how does this affect our industry and our business? And how can I translate that? And is there a consistency? And then you have your business model, and every business model, and this is what we did a lot more in the new business model navigator. What are the underlying assumptions of your business model? How can I test the critical underlying assumptions? And then we also brought up test procedures depending on, am I actually just learning more from the customer? Is it a learning testing procedure? Am I learning? Is it more in terms of understanding better? Is it in terms of verifying a hypothesis? And this is, I think, where science actually can contribute a lot. So I always say we're always a bit self-critical. It's not theory. No, theory is the best practice. A good theory is the best practice because it gives a mindset, and every business model has an implicit mindset, and make this mindset explicit. What are the 5 most critical underlying assumptions? And then go for each one. How can I test it as fast and as cheap as possible? That is actually the most critical part. And that is what we described in our new book.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Gassman. Just one last question. For SME managers looking forward, what one piece of advice would you give them to enable them to survive the next 18 months and to be in a position to grow when we get through this turbulence?
Yes, great question. So really to summarize, first thing really in the short term, how to adapt today's business model, do that as agile and value proposition driven as any possible, but learn also from others how to do it. This is short term, how to adapt the business model. Second, really identify the long-going trends, and translate what does it mean actually for your business and your business model. And third, really go through our process in the business model navigator in terms of understand really your business model and understand what are the change drivers which pressure your business. think in terms of how can you learn from others, because everything is already there. You don't have to reinvent the world. But then most importantly, make explicit after you have developed a business model concept, what are your 5 underlying most critical assumptions and of that business model that it works. This can be, is the customer really going on that? It can be, do we really get a partner in the ecosystem really to develop something together? Do we get actually a commitment from a partner? Could be also, do we have the capabilities to sell actually the new value proposition? And then to develop a testing strategy for each of them. And then really to summarize again, really as an SME, think big despite the liability of smallness. Start small because your resources is limited. Fail cheap because the money is maybe something which is getting more and more critical at the moment, and learn faster. Definitely the world is turning faster at the moment. Everything is going faster, and we just have to make sure, and this is same relevant for all of companies, that we just learn faster than the world changed around us. If we accelerate our learning journey, I think we will have also a bright future, especially for SMEs in Europe in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Oliver. I'd like to thank all the listeners for listening in on this. We will be putting up a couple of links to Oliver's work. There's some excellent videos on St. Gallen University's website that we'll be giving you the links to. But on a personal note, and from InterTrade Ireland, I'd like to thank you, Oliver, for giving the time. I know how incredibly busy you are. And I hope that you, your family, and everybody in Switzerland is keeping well. And what we hope that we will have the opportunity to have you back physically here in Ireland at some stage in the future. So thank you again, Oliver. All right, thanks.
Yeah.